Hello, and welcome to a special edition of the SYS podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm going to be diving into the specifics of how I cast my latest film, The Rideshare Killer, which stars Eric Roberts and Tuesday Knight and a host of other great actors. So stay tuned for an in-depth explanation about how all that came together and how you can potentially attach talent to your project as well. A lot of what I did and how it came together could work for any type of a film with any type of actor. So stay tuned for that. Right now, as this podcast is published, I'm running a Kickstarter campaign to raise money for post-production for The Rideshare Killer. We're trying to raise around $20,000. If you have any interest in contributing, please do check it out as soon as possible, as next week is our last week. It only runs until February 17th at 6 p.m. Pacific time. I posted a bunch of new rewards yesterday that I thought would be especially interesting to screenwriters. So have a look at those, and let me just talk about those for a minute. First, I put up a $5 reward where I will personally read your logline and give you notes on it. All you have to do is chip in $5 and then just email me your logline along with the Kickstarter receipt, and I'll get notes back to you once the Kickstarter campaign has ended. This is a tip for people who are looking to run their own Kickstarter campaign. There is some value in having a lot of contributors, even if you're not putting in even if those contributors are not putting in a lot of money. My understanding of the Kickstarter algorithm is that if you have a lot of contributors, it will help them see your project and potentially recommend it to other people that are using the Kickstarter platform. But you need to have good user engagement, which means you need to have a lot of people actually contributing to the project, not just, a few people contributing large sums of money. So it's good just to build that user engagement if you want to run a Kickstarter campaign. And there's, this is not my idea. This is just out there. If you look for, tips for running a Kickstarter campaign, it's oftentimes you'll be encouraged to just do a $1, a very, very inexpensive reward, just to kind of get people in the flow of things and just, again, get that engagement up. Anyway, I thought this would be a cool reward for a screenwriter as well. If you have any interest in me looking over your logline, do check out this reward. So the next thing I've done is I'm offering a variety of SYS products at deeply discounted rates if you contribute through the Kickstarter campaign. The first one is a script analysis for just $79. I usually charge $89 for this, so you get the same exact thing that you would normally pay $89. You get it for $79, so you can get your script analyzed at a discount, and you can also help me out by contributing. So it's hopefully a win-win. You get your script analyzed at a discount, and then I get some additional funds that I can put towards post-production. I'm giving away my email and fax blast to producers, which has around 5,000 contacts on it if you contribute $109. This is usually sold on sellingyourscreenplay.com for $159. So that's, at least a third off, or almost a third off at $109 versus $159. It's a savings of $50. Again, this is a big part of my own promoting my own scripts. I've optioned and sold a good number of scripts through this email and fax blast. Other people have had success as well. And again, that one is just $109. If you contribute $109, you'll get the email and fax blast. And the last thing I'm going to be offering is a SYS Select bundle, which you can get for $500. With this reward, you get one email and fax blast to producers. Again, that's valued at $159. You get one email and fax blast to agents and managers. That's valued at $109. You get a one-year subscription to SYS Select, which is valued at $300. And you get an SYS Script Analysis 3-packs where you can get 3 scripts analyzed. You can use this however you want. You can have one script analyzed 3 times, or you can have 3 scripts reviewed. You can have 3 scripts reviewed once, or one script reviewed 3 times, or any combination of that. And that usually is $200. So this is a total value package of $760, which is just, as I said, I'm just offering up for $500 if you can contribute through the Kickstarter campaign. If you listen to my podcast, you'll know that I never discount any of my products. So this really is a rare opportunity. If you were thinking about potentially trying any of the SYS products or services, now is a great time to do it. Again, hopefully this is a win-win for my audience and for myself. You guys will potentially get some cool products that will help your career, and obviously I'll get some help just getting post-production funds in place for this film. I get a lot of emails from people who thank me for putting out so much free content, the blog posts that I've written, and obviously the weekly podcast that I put out. And they're always very thankful, and they always say, hey, how can I help you? Well, this is sort of the time where I think I could actually use some help getting this project over the finish line. So if you listen to my podcast, you use the site or read some of my blog posts, and you feel like you've gotten some value out of those, and wouldn't mind contributing to this Kickstarter campaign, it would be very, very, very much appreciated. Again, even just $1 is helpful, because it again will boost engagement and just start to get the ball rolling. Anyway, I will link to it in the show notes, but all you have to do is go to www.theridesharekiller.com, and that will take you to the Kickstarter landing page. Or if the Kickstarter campaign has ended, that will take you to the official website. Once again, the campaign ends February 17th, 2020. So I'm recording this on Thursday, February 6th. So just a little over a week will be the end of the Kickstarter campaign. So please do, if you have any interest, please do check that out. And I do, I've mentioned this before on my podcast, I put a bunch of teaser trailers up as well. There's a teaser trailer up in the main Kickstarter video, which features Tuesday Night, which is our lead actress. And then I also created a teaser trailer for Eric Roberts, a little scene that Eric did in the movie as well. And those are both, again, on the Kickstarter page if you want to check those out. Anyway, that's my pitch. Hopefully it wasn't too much. So now let's get into the main segment today. What I'm going to be talking about is how this film was cast. So the first thing we did was we posted a casting notice for some of our main characters through a service called Breakdown Services Ltd. And that's literally breakdownexpress.com. This is a service that big productions use to cast their shows. So this goes out, once you post your notice with the Breakdown Services, it goes out to all the major agencies, and they will get that in the morning, and then they will start submitting their clients where appropriate. In addition, there is a thing called Actors Access, which is somehow affiliated, or maybe it's owned by Breakdown Services, not exactly sure on that, but Actors Access is basically a service that actors can join, and then if the casting director posts the casting notice through Breakdown Services, they can choose whether to share it just with agents or managers, or to also share it with Actors Access. And obviously for a low budget project like this that was non-union, we were happy to share it with Actors Access. And I would say it was a pretty even mix. I'd say about half the actors that we got came through agents and managers, and about half of them came through Actors Access. And I'm trying to think now as I'm recording this, I could have looked this up, but I'm trying to think the people we actually cast, how many of them came through Actors Access versus a agent and submission. I'll have to think about that. I think it was we cast 4 people through this first round of casting, and I'm going to talk about all 4 of those folks in a minute. I think one of them came through an agent manager, and the other 3 actually came through Actors Access, not through an agent manager. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing this as well. Now, my understanding of this is that it's a free. The Breakdown Services doesn't charge you to post these casting notices. However, the daily pay rate for an actor has to be at a minimum of $125 per day. So we were at that minimum, the $125 per day. So I don't think we paid for the casting notice. Now, you can do a free one and only send it to Actors Access, or you can pay $100. Again, this is only if you're below this $125 per day threshold. I think you can pay $100 to Breakdown Services, and then it will go out to everybody, including the agent managers and potentially Actors Access. And I think there you can also just do a free one. And what this really means is like they don't want a bunch of people just posting web series for free through their service. Oh, it's deferred pay. Oh, it pays copy credit and $10 gas money. They don't want those kinds of things going out unless you're willing to cough up. I think it's $100. With this one, it didn't affect us. When I did the pinch 3 years ago, I was below that $125 per day threshold, so I ended up having to pay. So this has been a few years since I actually paid, so don't quote me on the exact numbers, but that's basically how it works. So anyways, we posted notices for our main roles, and then we started to look through submissions, and I'm not exaggerating. I mean, the roles we were casting were mainly the 3 women. And the age range was pretty open, but just it's a tech company. These were women that work at a tech company. There was some different. Each one of the characters was a little bit different, but there was nothing super unusual. And I'm pointing that out because again, when I did the pinch, one of the characters, for instance, I wanted just this enormous guy with just this huge physical presence. So I wanted this guy that was 6'4" and just absolutely enormous. And when I did that, I think I only got 15 or 20 submissions. But these roles were much more open. We really going into this, we weren't tied to any specific ethnicity with the roles. I mean, I wrote it in the script. I think I probably did I probably did write it into the script. I'm trying to think if I even did, to be honest with you. The ethnicity was not that important. So my point is these casting notices, it was a pretty wide net. So we had people, there was a certain age range and a certain look we were looking for. You have to be sort of modern. You work for a tech company. So one of the roles is the graphic designer. We wanted someone that was sort of artsy, cool, hip, and artsy. So there was some specifics to the characters, but it was pretty broad. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because there were literally hundreds, if not thousands, for each one of these. I think we had over 2,000 submissions just for these 3 roles. Don't quote me on that, but it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that we had to sort through. So that's what we did. We went through, and basically they submit all through this breakdown service website. And their site, it's a little bit, I would say, outdated and clunky, but it's pretty well done in the sense that they really understand, when they built the site, they really understood what people meaning myself, producers and casting directors, how they would want to use the site. So they've got, it's a little bit cumbersome, but it basically works pretty well. So anyways, the actors submit. You put out the casting notice. The actors then start submitting, and then they start going into the bin. So for instance, our lead character was named Julia Altamari. So we created, a casting notice for Julia Altamari, and then all the actors start submitting. And if they're submitting for that role, it goes into the Julia Altamari bin. You start to look through it. Now at this point, all you're getting is basically headshots, and most actors will have a reel. So you just go through and you look at them. You do the best you can with so many. It's not like you're going to watch every single actor's reel, but you look at their headshot. Is this person, can I see this person in this role just, aesthetically? And then if you say, okay, yes, then you would drill down, look at their reel, say, does this person seem like a good actor, and then what you do, so then you start creating, and you can flag them inside the service. You can give them sort of a rating, which is kind of arbitrary, but again, you're just putting these in bins. And then once you sort of decide, okay, these are the people we like, then you send out a notice to those people saying, hey, would you do an online audition? You upload some sides, which is basically a scene from the script, and then they will just get their iPhone, or they'll get a friend or whatever, and they'll just record them doing the audition, and then they'll upload it to this breakdown services system. And so then you get a bin of all the Julia Altamaris, and then they're actually auditioning with your script pages. So then you can really see, is this person right for this character? Because you've given them a scene to perform. So you go through all those. And again, we had hundreds, and Tony and myself, the other producer, we made an effort to go through all of them. This was several months ago. We had the time, and that was sort of one of our commitments, was it's going to be low budget, but let's really spend some time trying to find the right actors for this, for each one of these roles. And that's what we did. So we went through all these auditions, and it took several weeks to get through hundreds of these audition tapes. And then what we did was we scheduled the ones we liked. And the way we did it was, me and Tony, actually, we both went through separately every single one of these audition tapes, and we flagged the ones that we liked. And then we got together, and we basically just sort of compared our notes and said, okay, did you like this one? And if we both liked them, then we brought them in for an audition. And surprisingly, I would say 80% of the time, Tony and I agreed, and we actually both picked out the same sorts of people. There was some where he liked and I didn't like, and I liked and he didn't like. But again, 80% of the ones that I chose, he also liked. So it was not that was not a difficult process. And I think it was good to kind of have some, consensus on who we actually wanted to see. So then we bring in the people to audition. I rented a little audition space. We bring the people in for auditions, and then they do a scene, and I think I gave them the same scene plus another scene to do in the live audition. So again, you're just narrowing it down. And then we ran two rounds of in-person auditions. Basically, we ran a first round, and then we did a callback session. And then after that second callback session, we basically had our four, really just sort of the 4 main characters. We had those cast, and then we went from there basically into pre-production. So though one thing that I would note is, I would say, and this is important to keep in mind, I would say Probably maybe 50%. So when you send out the you look at their reel, you look at their headshot, you send them a note saying, okay, please do an online audition, upload it to the breakdown services. I would say 50% of the actors that we said, okay, do the online audition, they just didn't even bother. We just never heard from them again. And that's actually a good thing, because you're starting to figure out who the flaky people are, who are the people that are actually interested in doing this project. It's easy to just go through and just, oh, I'll submit to this and I'll submit to that and I'll submit to this. So I'm sure these actors through Actors Access are making a lot of submissions, and then, half the time they don't even bother following up. Obviously, those are not actors you want to work with. So this is a good way of sort of vetting those actors and getting through that process. So anyways, let's move on and talk about the lead for the film. And that was, as I said, Julia Altomari is the character's name. And we ended up casting Tuesday night. I will link to her IMDb page in the show notes, but she's a very accomplished actor. One of her biggest roles was in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. She had one of the main roles in that film. So as soon as I noticed that she had submitted, one of the other processes as you're going through this, you can click oftentimes. Well, I think their resume is in the breakdown services. So as I said, you're looking at their reel, their headshot, and you can take a glance at their resume, and you can then obviously go on IMDb and look at them. So you're also, that's part of what you're factoring in, I think, when you're going through this process. Tuesday is a very accomplished actor, and so I knew we weren't going to find someone on a low budget project like this that was more accomplished. So then it was just a matter of figuring out if she was right for the role. She did a great job with the online audition. Obviously, we called her in for an in-person audition, and frankly, she knocked it out of the park with her in-person audition. She's a professional. She's been doing this for many, many years. So it was very clear. It was not a tough decision, and that's certainly not to say anything about the other women that auditioned for this role. But sometimes you just find that person that you just really in your gut feels like a real good fit for this role, and Tuesday was definitely that. And the other big factor was having people with bona fide horror credentials. Tuesday is big in the horror space. I mean, again, she's been in the Nightmare on Elm Street series and done a bunch of other horror movies as well. So she's sort of known in the horror circles. And since we're doing a horror movie, I felt like that was another little, just a little bonus that we're getting someone with real good horror credentials. And that's going to be part of the story that we're telling to distributors, to audiences when we try and sell this project. So again, she was like super professional. The other thing is she was very, very proactive about just emailing me. I think she had maybe some questions about the script, but I could just tell, and it was, it was good questions. It wasn't bothersome questions. It wasn't annoying questions. She really was reading the script. I think that's what it was. I think she wanted to read the entire script before the audition. And then she was, complimentary and really, really liked the script and emailed back. So again, she did a lot of cool things to kind of, prime the pump and get ready, and she did everything right just in terms of getting the part and doing saying the right things and then showing up super prepared. The other big thing you get with these in-person auditions is a lot of the actors will show up and they don't really take it that seriously, and they don't really know the lines, and it's kind of expected. Most actors, like I'd say 60, 70, 80% of them, when they come in for an audition like that, they have memorized the sides and they can pretty much do them from top to bottom. And again, I am not, and I think most producers would say this, you're not going to cast someone who couldn't be bothered to memorize the sides, because when you get on set, you want someone who knows their lines, knows the script, and this is the first step to kind of seeing if that's the kind of person they are. So another big part of this was I am friends with Oliver Robbins, who is also an actor and is also in this film, and I will talk to him about in a minute. I met him in 2008. He directed a film that I had just wrote called Man Overboard. So I got to know him through that. We had the same manager, and so we would see each other. We got to know each other on this Man Overboard film, which was in 2008, so now well over 10 years ago. But we would see each other over the years. This management company would have like a Christmas party or whatever, and we would see him. His girlfriend gets along real well with my wife, and I like him, so we always just sort of got along, and we'd see them over the course of these years for a variety of things. Oliver lives a ways away, so I wouldn't say it's someone that I see often or get together. He's not a great close friend of mine, but he's a super nice guy. He's a good actor, and so he's another person, again, that we ended up casting. But what I did was, I'm friends with him on Facebook, needless to say, because he is a friend of mine. And so when I was doing my due diligence on Tuesday, I went to Facebook and looked at her Facebook page, and it pops up and says, oh, you have one mutual friend, Oliver. So then I reached out to Oliver and said, hey, I'm thinking of casting Tuesday for this project. What do you think of her? And he was like, oh, she's super nice. And he had met her. He's kind of known in the horror circles as well. So they had actually met each other at one of these horror conventions where they were signing autographs. And so they had known each other for quite a while. And so he had nothing but, complimentary things to say about her. And that's important with these types of low budget films. And I'm going to talk about that more sort of at the end of this. But the big question I've gotten, from some people is, well, how did you find Tuesday? How did you get someone for such a low budget project? How did you find someone so accomplished? And, she submitted through this breakdown services. And here's the thing, professional actors, they want to work. And even the most successful, hardest working actor, maybe if you're on a series regular on a TV show, you're simply so busy you can't, you just don't have time to do anything else. But even then you have an off season where you probably have a few months where you're not working. But again, even the most successful professional actors have a lot of downtime where they're not doing anything. And so if you can catch the actor at that time where they're not doing anything else, they're going to be happy to do a project that they think is cool. They're going to meet you if they like you. All those things are going to be factored in. And it's exactly like, I'm sure Tuesday was probably doing some of the same calculations that I just talked about. Was, what did she think of me and Tony as producers? Did we seem, professional and legitimate? Did we seem shady or whatever? And so I'm sure that impacted her decision of whether she wanted to actually be in this project too. She probably did some due diligence on us. Maybe she reached out to Oliver, noticed that same thing, and reached out to Oliver to see, hey, well, what do you think of this, this guy, Ashley? And that's so much a part of this process. There's just, you have to do your due diligence, and I would recommend that as a big part of it. Again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. But the big point here is there's a lot of actors out there that want to work. And when you put your notice out on this breakdown services, you're going to get obviously some rank amateurs, some beginners, but you're going to get some very experienced actors. And Tuesday was by no means the most experienced or most well-known actor that came through the breakdown services. We had someone from one of the Friday the 13th movies submit. She just wasn't right for the role. And we had somebody else as well that had been, a big star in like a big hit movie about 10, 15 years ago submit. So there were some real good names that came through this service, this breakdown services. So you can find the actors, again, if they have some downtime, they might be willing to do your project. So the next actor that we brought on was a modern day scream queen named Victoria DeMar. She does a lot of these low budget horror movies. And when her audition tape came in, she really fit the role aesthetically. Again, she's the one that plays Naomi in this, and she's like the graphic designer, sort of the artsy graphic designer for this ride sharing company. And so we wanted someone that was kind of, artsy, tattoos, just looked really, kind of like a creative type. She is that in real life, and she plays that well. But her audition tape, this is the one tip I would give to actors, but maybe even to writers too, and it could be applicable. She was very creative with her audition, and in the audition tape, she's talking to this guy that she's kind of dating, and they have a kiss at the end, and she really did the kiss up it was just her, but she just did it, and I think she actually kissed the door sill, and really played it up, but it was really memorable, and it was just a creative choice, and it ultimately translated on set as well. We cast this role very well. She was perfect for the role. Again, it was a very easy decision because she really just fit the role, sort of what we had in mind, the person we had in mind. She, again, came with a lot of good bona fide horror credentials, very creative, and again, very professional. When she showed up to the audition, she knew her lines. She just was professional. You could tell, she's done this before, and you can really kind of tell the people that understand how these movies work. Same thing. She has been in a lot of these low budget movies, so I had some mutual friends that had worked with her, and in fact, one of the guys that I reached out to when I was doing my due diligence on her was a guy that I interviewed on this podcast. He ended up friending me on Facebook. So I don't really even know the guy, but I'm friends with him on Facebook. So I just reached out to him through Facebook and told him, and he got right back to me. So, oh yeah, I worked with Victoria, and she was great. So again, he had nothing but good things to say. And in fact, the other person that knew her was Kurt Weiser, and he's actually the one of the producers and editors now of this exact podcast. He does all the sort of really the logistical production of actually putting this podcast together. And he writes for a filmmaking blog, and he had actually interviewed her, and I had seen that, and that was a few months ago. So I actually reached out to him once the I saw her audition come through. I reached out to him. What do you think of her? And again, he had nothing but nice things to say about her. And so that was, again, a nice little bonus as well. So the next role was we cast Croy Province as Lorraine, and she plays kind of sort of the nerdy computer programmer type. So definitely a different look than Victoria, or even a different look than Tuesday. Again, same sort of thing. She came through, did a great job with the audition, very professional. But I didn't have anybody with her. I didn't have anybody we didn't have any mutual friends, so there was no real due diligence that I could do on her. But coincidentally, so Tuesday had actually just done a scene. They had just done a movie, and coincidentally, they had been in a scene together. So Tuesday had met Croy, and we had Tuesday. We cast. So as I said, we did 2 rounds of auditions, of in-person auditions, and we offered the role to Tuesday before the second round. And Tuesday actually came out for the second round to read against the actors that we brought back for the Lorraine role. Really, it was the Lorraine role that we brought a lot of people back, because the chemistry was very important in the script. The role that Tuesday plays and the role that Croy plays, they're supposed to be in the story. They're supposed to be really good friends, and so I knew that the chemistry between those two was an important part of the casting process. And I knew once we cast our lead, in this case Tuesday, I wanted to then make sure that I got someone that just there's that little spark of friendship or something that you can just sense between two people. You can see it in real life, and it often translates on film. So once Tuesday, during these callbacks, she read against Croy, and then after that, they had their scene together. Oh, I remember you, and then they did this scene, and then so then we were sort of narrowing it down. Okay, who are we going to cast for Lorraine? Tuesday said, I just did this scene with Croy. She was on our short list. We had narrowed it down to maybe 2 or 3 people. She was on our short list already. And then, but again, that little personal connection where Tuesday said, oh, I was in the scene. She was well prepared, very professional, did a great job, really friendly. I felt like we had some chemistry. That little bit was enough to kind of push it over the top. And again, these are all little things that you just want to keep in mind. Because those little things can actually help. I remember when I first moved to LA, I went to this very small liberal arts college called Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina. And when I first got to LA, I was just applying for all types of jobs. I had played tennis at Guilford College and taught tennis, so I applied for a bunch of tennis jobs when I first got out here, and I also obviously was applying for PA jobs. And every now and then you'd get an interview, you'd send in your resume, you'd find these leads, and this was in the 90s, long before sort of the internet had really even taken off. It was there, but it wasn't like it is now, where everything was online. And so I would submit to these things. I would find leads wherever you could find them. Tennis journals, I suppose, back then, for the tennis jobs, and then these PA jobs, I think I would find those in the back of Hollywood Reporter or Daily Variety, something like that. They would have little ads. So I would submit to them. And then when I would get interviews, I was just always, well, why did I get this interview and not these other interviews? So I would always ask. I would go in there, do the interview as best I can, and I would always kind of try and fill it out. And I can't tell you 2 interviews that I remember specifically. The people said, this one tennis interview I had, it was actually this real ritzy tennis club right by the Getty Center. Here in LA, and I went up there and did a little audition. I didn't end up getting the job, but I asked him, I said, well, why did you bring me in? And the reason he brought me in was he had actually, the main head tennis coach at this thing, it was a big tennis clinic, the main tennis coach that was running this thing, he had gone to college in North Carolina, and I think he had gone to Elon College or High Point College. I can't remember which, but the bottom line was those are also small liberal arts schools that are real close to Guilford College, and the tennis teams used to play each other. So he was sort of Guilford College was familiar to him. He thought it was just a cool thing, connection. So he said, I'll just bring this guy in. So again, just a little personal connection like that, that's kind of just coincidentally can really help. And same thing, I remember one of these PA jobs. It was the same thing. I got called in. One of the PA jobs I actually got, I asked him, hey, well, how did I get the job? He said, honestly, I just he had like 125 resumes. I just pulled yours off and called you. You seem cool, and we hired you. But one of the other PA jobs that I did, and in fact, actually, I take that back. I interviewed for it, but I actually didn't get that PI job. But it was the same thing. I asked him, well, how did you get me? How did you get me off these other 100 resumes. And it was the same thing. He had grown up in North Carolina, and he was familiar with Guilford College, and thought highly of it, or had a friend or a sister or something that had gone there. So it was just familiar to him, and he just thought it was a cool connection. So he brought me in for the interview. So all that to say is that these little connections can actually add up, and they can be really important on a low budget film like this. There's not a lot of time for there's not time or money for any prima donnas or people that aren't there because they want to do the work. And so that's part of this casting process. It wasn't just purely acting ability or purely the look. We needed people that understand that we're making a low budget film, and there's going to be some rough 12-hour days ahead of us, and we need people that can work with us a little bit on that. So all of that is super important. And really worth thinking about. And again, I keep emphasizing this thing with due diligence. It's just so important. And actors should do it on the producers, and same thing with writers. I mean, when you're getting ready to option a script to a producer, you should do some significant due diligence on that producer and really really decide whether it's someone you want to go into business with. So the other role that we cast through this first round of auditions was Anouk Samuel. She plays the woman at the beginning of the script that kind of meets the rideshare killer first, and that was a perfect role for her. She actually came in to read for the role of Lorraine, the role that we ended up giving to Croy. And a lot of these things, again, it's not necessarily acting ability always, but Anouk definitely was not right for that role. Just sort of her looks and that sort of stuff. She was much better for this role of Samantha that we cast her in. So we just offered her that role, which she accepted. And again, she ended up doing a great job with that role. So it all worked out. And that's kind of how it goes. I mean, you might see somebody that coming into audition for one role and say, hey, could you come back? And we did that several times throughout this process, where someone would audition for one role and say, I don't think you're quite right for this role, but what about reading for this other role? And then they would come back potentially that second round, that second in-person audition. So that's so anyways, those are our main four actresses that we cast and how we cast them. So now let's talk about some of the other roles. I think probably the most interesting role for a lot of people will be Eric Roberts. If you're not familiar with him, he in the early 80s, he had a really not even the earliest, really throughout the 80s, he was nominated for an Academy Award, but he did some really great movies. Star 80 is a movie. It's a fantastic movie, and I remember seeing it as a kid. I was young when I watched that movie, and there's a very dramatic scene at the end with Eric Roberts where he commits suicide, and I think he murders his wife and commits suicide. It's a really dramatic scene, and to be honest with you, it's one of those scenes that it always stuck with me my whole life. I was frankly way too young to watch that movie. I probably was 10 or 12 years old. It was not a movie that was appropriate for a 10 or 12-year-old kid, but for whatever reason, my parents let me watch it. It was at Thanksgiving, actually. I don't know if they actually knew what was going on, but it was like a big family function. And me and my brother sort of snuck off in this movie, Star 80. I don't know if they had it on tape or it was on TV or HBO or whatever, but anyways, we watched this thing and it always stuck with me. It's just, and he did not get an Academy Award nomination for that film, but he got it for another film. But anyways, he was a very accomplished actor. His career started to wane into the 90s and now into the 2000s. So he does a lot of low budget films. If you listen to this podcast, his name is someone that I've mentioned numerous times because he's kind of known as someone he's a good actor. Like, his acting talent is not in dispute, and he will do low budget films. He has no problem doing that kind of stuff. Again, he gets some big films. He was in Dark Knight. I mean, he still gets some big roles in big films, but I think he's just a guy that he'd prefer to just be out working on a low budget film as opposed to just sitting at home waiting for his phone to ring. That was kind of the impression I got. He was, anyway, so let me just talk about getting him cast. So Tuesday night, so once we cast her as Julia, she has the same manager as Eric Roberts. And so once we cast Tuesday, we had a meeting with Tuesday, said, okay, who else can we cast in some of these other roles? And we started to get her input, and she was very, very helpful. And in fact, we're giving her a co-producer credit because she actually helped cast a number of these roles. A lot of them I'm not necessarily going to dig into here today, but some of the other roles that I'm going to talk about today, she actually helped with those. But definitely, she was the cornerstone to getting Eric Roberts in the film. Again, they had the same manager, so she just basically reached out to her manager, said she was doing this film, and then she got me in touch with her manager named Tim, and then we just basically cut the deal. I don't want to say exactly how much we paid Eric. I'm not sure that would be fair to him. All of these things are highly negotiable, and that's the one tip I would give you is that, again, it's not just the money for these guys. There's going to be other factors. Is Eric available? If he's not doing anything, he'd rather work than not work. So these fees that these actors like him charge, as I said, they're highly, highly, highly negotiable. So once I started talking to Tim, his manager, it became very much a negotiation process and coming to terms with how much he would be willing to accept. It ultimately, this entire film's budget is $75,000, and that includes the $20,000 for Kickstarter. So we only had $55,000 basically to produce the movie, and then we're doing the Kickstarter now to try and raise the $20,000 for post-production. So I will say that it was a insignificant or an almost insignificant portion of the budget, and in fact, most of the crew that worked on this film, I think they probably made more than he did. Now, granted, the crew had to work 17 days. We had him for 3 days. So obviously there's a little bit difference in the amount of effort that they had to things, but we didn't pay him really any more than we paid any of the other crew people, just to give you some idea about where that all was. The other thing was I knew just from being in the business and knowing other people that have worked with him, I knew that he would want to use cue cards. He's doing so many movies, he's not going to necessarily learn all the lines for every movie that he does. And that's fine. Again, he's a great actor, but I thought that was going to be a problem. And truthfully, it wasn't a problem at all. He is a professional through and through, and he knows how to use these cue cards. So frankly, once he showed up on set, we had prepared the cue cards. He sent us, or his manager sent us basically like a little document saying, please prepare the cue cards like this. We prepared the cue cards for him. He showed up on set, and he would come to me. I introduced myself. Hey, I'm the director, blah, blah, blah. We had a little conversation, and he would just come up to me. Oh, where's the next scene? Where am I going to be in the next scene? And then we would go over there. He would look around. Okay, let's put the cue cards here. We had an assistant, a PA on set that would come and hang the cue cards, but he really took ownership of getting the cue cards placed properly. And truthfully, he didn't really even need the cue cards most of the time. I think it was there just as sort of a help in case he needed them. But once we ran through the scene once or twice, he pretty much had the lines down. There was nothing that he didn't have tons and tons of lines, but each scene probably had 5, 6, 8, lines that we did with him. But he knows how to use these cue cards, very, very well. So it was not a problem at all. And he's really a super nice. He's a very charming guy, to be honest with you. On set, he's funny, personable, and just he understands what you're doing. He does a lot of these low budget films, so he's not expecting a star wagon or any kind of real prima donna treatment or anything. He shows up. He ate the food. My mom was the one cooking for craft services. And I actually read after this, it was just, I think it was yesterday when I was putting together the Kickstarter bio for him, or maybe 2 or 3 days ago. I think on IMDb, I think it said he was a vegetarian or vegan. And I don't think my mom really cooked anything special. All of her stuff was not vegetarian, vegan. He didn't complain or say anything. I think he just ate it. So again, he was just totally cool. And I would definitely recommend, if you're looking for, some name talent in your project, reach out to him. And you can go on IMDb and just IMDb Pro, and you can probably get his current management or agent contact information from that. And just reach out to him. Again, he's a professional actor, so this isn't amateur hour, and I'm sure his manager is going to look you up in your credits and stuff and make sure that you are bona fide. So you want to present yourself in a very professional manner. This business is it's a small business. People know each other, and so your reputation is that's really all you have in this business, and you don't want to soil it, especially when you're just starting out. So if you go to him, his agent and his manager, oh, we're doing this movie, can we get Eric Roberts? Okay, sure, let's cut the deal, and then, oh, sorry, the money fell through, or oh, sorry, we're not going to do it. And if you appear to be flaky, that will carry with you the rest of your career. So again, understand what you're doing. Eric Roberts is open to working on some of these low budget projects, but you don't want to get a bad reputation as someone that's flaky in the business, because there's a lot of flaky people, and once you are one of those flaky people, you're going to have a hard time ever righting that reputation. So, anyways, let's talk briefly about some of the other actors that are in the project. I mentioned my friend Oliver Robbins. Again, we met in 2008 when he directed a film that I wrote called Man Overboard, and sort of became friends. Again, we had the same manager, blah, 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 and sort of stayed in touch. I knew, just again, I'm friends with him on Facebook. And oh, just to preface that too, Oliver Robbins, he was the kid from the original Poltergeist film. He was in Poltergeist and Poltergeist 2. He was a child actor back in the 80s, and now he's grown in his 40s, and still producing, writing, directing, and acting in movies. And I'm friends with him on Facebook, so I sort of see what he's up to through that. And he just did a movie himself where he wrote it, directed, produced it, and he starred in it. And so I knew, I think that's probably what sort of just connected the dots for me. I've seen some of his posts on Facebook, so I knew he was still interested in acting. So as this thing was ramping up, I said, I'll reach out to Oliver and see if he wants to do it. And he was happy to do it. I think from his standpoint, again, as an actor, he's really doing a lot of producing and directing and writing so that he can have vehicles for him to act in. And so I think he was very, very happy to just come and just act. He didn't have to worry about any of the nonsense with, production and money and all that sort of stuff. So he seemed very happy. Again, he's a professional actor. He's been working for years. And again, because he was in the original Poltergeist, he has some sort of bona fide horror credentials. And that's important to sort of developing sort of the overall story of the cast. Who is in this movie? And we have these people that have done some big horror projects. So the next person, or one of the next people we cast, was James Balsamo, and he is a actor, writer, director, producer, actually not unlike Oliver, and he's very much immersed in the horror scene. He does a lot of low budget horror movies himself, again, writing, directing, producing, and acting. He is someone that came through Tuesday. He actually did a movie, and he cast Tuesday in the movie. So Tuesday was knew him, and in fact, coincidentally, Tuesday actually met Tim, who is Eric Roberts' manager on the set of this movie that James was doing. So it all is a circle around, because James also cast Eric Roberts in one of the most recent movies that he did. So again, Tuesday, when we were looking for this role, I had somebody I liked for the role of Chip. That's James plays the role of Chip in this, and he's kind of like a sleazy, kind of like wannabe womanizer type of a guy. And I actually had someone that I wanted cast, but they just couldn't. It's an actor I know that I've used before, but he just the schedule. He was going away, and he just couldn't make the schedule work. So then, kind of at the last minute, I was talking to Tuesday. Said, "Hey, do you have any actors friends that you think would be right for this role?" And she said, "Hey, James." So then I got in touch with James, and we cast him in that. And again, he's another one with real good bona fide horror credentials. So it's just good to again kind of just create this picture that, hey, we have this horror movie, and we've got all these cool horror, actors in it. Anyways, that's how James Balsamo ended up in the film. As you can see, one of the things we tried to really give this film is these horror credentials. I don't know that I've ever seen a sub $100,000 film with a much better cast than this. I think we did pretty well for a less than $100,000 film getting this film cast. As I said, I just there's nobody that I really thought would have done something a little bit different with them. All these people that I've mentioned were professionals, and they showed up, they knew their lines, and were great to work with, and hopefully I'll get a chance to work with them again. Anyways, so that's basically how all of the casting came together. If you have any questions or comments, just reach out to me. Like, I'm very available. I try and answer every email that I get, info@sellingyourscreenplay.com. If you're thinking about trying to put a project together as a writer producer, happy to offer my 2 cents. So just drop me an email. Anyways, again, the teaser trailer for the Rideshare Killer is on our Kickstarter page. I have 2 teaser trailers, one with Tuesday and one with Eric Roberts. The one with Tuesday is at the end of the Kickstarter video on the main page, and then there's an update where I kind of highlight Eric Roberts in the film, and I put a nice little teaser trailer there. So if you have any interest in that, please do go to our Kickstarter page and check that out. Again, just go to www.theridesharekiller.com. And of course, anybody you can pass this to is greatly appreciated. If you have any friends that are really into horror films, please do just share the link with them. Maybe they would get a kick out of contributing some money and sort of being a part of this process. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope you found this episode valuable. Again, don't hesitate to reach out with any questions and comments. Thanks.